Rolling. Cool.
Well, my name is Rajesh Hamal. I've been working in Nepali film for the last 27 years.
We'll get eyeline.
To you. All right. I'm speaking to you.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Well, hi. I'm Rajesh Hamal. I've been working in Nepali films for the last 27 years, and I've done over 275 films in the last 27 years. Basically, that's it. Yeah.
Excellent. And as your role as ambassador, we're getting into a bit of the nitty-gritty bits before of what's been happening, but could you tell us about your role as the ambassador? Also, my vocal track will not be included in the documentary. So say your role as ambassador for building back rights.
Building back right, and I'm involved in several social causes, and this happens to be one of them, especially after the earthquake. So my job is basically to bring awareness that things has to be done, and we need to do things. So my role is mainly for that, and then also wherever it is needed to raise funds, to help the government if they require any kind of my assistance or my help. Basically, it's for that. But unfortunately, things are not really moving as fast or as quick as I would want to, or as I thought it would in the beginning, because right after the earthquake there was a lot of energy actually, and a lot of people got together, government and the policymakers and the social workers, and everybody got together and they said, okay, this disaster has happened and now we need to rebuild and we need to do things in a better way. So the initial energy was really there. But it looks like the energy was just confined to talking and making plans, but the ground reality hasn't really changed and did not change. So that is the sad part.
And could you tell us a bit about what you've seen to solidify that statement? I guess you've travelled a bit around Nepal. You've seen some schools and things being reconstructed. What is the situation at the moment?
Well, I personally haven't seen things being reconstructed. A few places that I went, the last place that I went was only about less than 10 days ago. Things are still pathetic there, and things haven't changed at all. Children are still studying in what they call temporary learning centers, with temporary shelters where it's corrugated roof and mud floors. Really not an environment for children to study in, and it doesn't even meet the basic requirements for children to get education. So it's very pathetic, and I don't know, there might be some places where it's been started or is being built, but I'm not aware of it so far. It's already almost a year since the earthquake happened, so it's kind of pathetic. Yeah.
So approaching this anniversary, what things do you think people should keep in mind, whether it be domestically within Nepal or internationally?
Well, right after the earthquake, the international assistance was already provided. It's just that our government has not been efficient enough to utilize the assistance that we got. Because, like I said, right after the earthquake, the energy level was pretty high. People came up with lots of new plans and new enthusiasm and said, okay, this destruction has happened, and this is also an opportunity for us to go in a new way, with the new things. So the energy level was very high, and right after the earthquake, within about less than 3 or 4 weeks, there was a huge international fundraising meeting in Nepal on a governmental level. So there were agencies and governments and representatives from all over the world who came into Nepal for this conference and pledged huge amount of money for rebuilding Nepal. So funds from the international sector is not what it is in short supply. The main obstacle, what I see, is the will of the government, the honesty of the government. I just see lacking in that department, because there's no dearth of funds. internationally or even locally, because a lot of Nepali people, a lot of kind of Nepali people came forward and donated lots of money, you know. Matter of fact, Nepali peoples living around the world were sort of like, they all got together, they all sort of like, you know, wanted to, you know, extend their helping hand in whatever way they could, you know, in whatever capacity they could. Everyone was putting in something. So, you know, within the Nepali people, international community, and even in the government's coffers, you know, a lot of people put in money. There was a Prime Minister Earthquake Relief Fund erected for that time, and money was pouring in. I mean, I personally went and did so many charity shows where there was a fundraising program to put into this coffer. But 1 year down the line, we don't know what has happened to it, how it has been utilized. Because like I said, in the ground, we don't see anything happening. So it's just, I think, the will and the honesty of the government rather than the money itself. Because I don't think so there's dearth of fund. It's just the will.
Yeah, the government itself's come under a lot of critical attention under the microscope. I guess the implementation of the Constitution didn't really help speed up.
Right, and the government was also entangled with their own politics as well. You know, we were on the verge of writing a constitution. All that was sort of like happening at the same time. You know, the earthquake thing. Okay, right after the earthquake, you know, everybody's mind was directed towards it. But then emotions come with an expiry date. You know, and a few months down the line, the government was again entangled with their own politics of constitution writings. You know, wrangling of who's going to be in power. You know, who's going to get the upper hand kind of thing. So that's what, again, you know, a few months down the line, the government sort of diverted their attention only to the politics, and then they got their constitution out, and there was again, you know, it was when the constitution was out, it was probably like from the frying pan into the fire, you know. We all thought that things are going to be now smooth after, you know, because all these years, it's been about 8 years that we are on the we were on the writing of the Constitution. So we were thinking that once the Constitution is out, everything is going to fall into place. But when the Constitution was finally out after 8 years of struggle, like I said, from frying pan into the fire, and things became even worse. We had this so-called blockade, and when the blockade happened, there were shortages of fuel, there were shortages of other essential things. So the aid programs could not be held, you know, in a proper manner. I personally, if I wanted to visit the villages and stuff like that, for the lack of transportation, for the lack of fuel, we couldn't do it. And in some of the organization that I was involved with, they had this rebuilding programs of schools or even houses in a village, and they had a certain plan put in place. But once the blockade happened, all the prices and everything shot up. So the budget went haywire, you know, everything got 25, 30, 35% more expensive. So all that kind of thing, you know. So, and that didn't help at all. It was like a double bonanza, you know. You have the earthquake, then you have the problems with the government and constitution, and then the blockade. It's like that's a hat trick not of a good kind.
Yeah, it's a big hat trick.
Yeah.
I guess if we want to like look at the economic scale of impact as well, because I think you'd be someone who'd be a good person to talk about. I mean, you're obviously living in this very well established house in Kathmandu, but you know a fair bit about the struggles of the Nepali economy and what a 30% inflation can do to it, and you know in rebuilding, how they have to factor in all these different budgeting avenues and streams.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the Nepali economy and how it functions and how it should be?
It's actually non-functional, you know. And and the way the economical situation is going on, it's actually a burden on every section of the society. Just not one section or the other. Even the people who are so-called well off with all these situations, it's pretty difficult to handle it because things are not stable, prices are not stable. You go to buy something today, tomorrow it might be a different cost. And then again, there is also the condition of you may have the power to buy it, but things are not available. So that, and it is a pathetic situation. And the only way we are sustaining is that a lot of Nepali people are working abroad. And that's how this country is running, basically. If all the Nepali people, and when I say Nepali people, I literally mean Nepali people of all backgrounds are going abroad and making, and earning their income. It's just not from one section or the other. There are a lot of people who are like, if they're like manual workers or laborers, or people who are academicians, people who are professionals, they're all going abroad to one country or the other, where they can get a job and they're earning and they're sending money home, and that's how the country is running. A Nepali person earning from abroad, sending home here, the wife is spending here, sending her children to school, but the money is actually coming from abroad. And that's how the country is sustaining on remittance. Otherwise, if all these Nepali people had to come to Nepal and earn in Nepal, there's no way that they could meet the inflation that the country is facing at the moment, because the inflation and the income of a person working in Nepal itself doesn't match at all, because the real income is so low in comparison to the inflation and the cost of things that there's no way that they will be able to make a decent living at all. And the only reason why many Nepalis, if you go around in Nepal and you see that they're actually living and eating and sending their children to school, is because a family member or two are working abroad and sending in money, and that's how they are running their machinery here. So it's pathetic. It's really bad. I mean, a lot of youth don't even think that in future that they will be earning things here and running their life, because they see that as almost impossible. Because even if they get a job here, the amount of income that they make does not match to the inflation. So it's very difficult for them to sustain. So that way, as far as the economy is concerned, I think it's very pathetic.
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing all of this exterior economy coming in, and then you don't even see where it goes. I mean, you should think, okay, all of this extra money is coming into Nepal, it's being spent, but where is it being spent? Who is the beneficiary of it? I mean, it almost seems as if it dissolves, because all of this money is coming. 10% of the population is living overseas, and they're earning incomes that are 5-10 times the amount of what any Nepali will see on average in their lifetime. I mean, where does it go? And how do we fix this problem of young Nepalese not seeing any future in their country and wanting to go abroad by default? How do we fix that that sense of national pride?
The only way to fix this is to get our politics right. To have a government, the will and the honesty, and to create a job. And that really hasn't happened. That seems like a very far-fetched thing at the moment, because the way the things are moving on, there's very little to be hopeful of, because the politics is chaotic, and the kind of relationship that we're having with our neighbors now makes things even worse. That doesn't help at all. So it's kind of difficult. And the like you said, the money that is coming from abroad are are basically spent on non-tangible things. There's nothing to show. It's just coming in, and people are spending it either for their day-to-day things, and the government is also not doing anything tangible with it. So that's a huge problem. And at one point or the other, all these workforce that has gone abroad and is working, at one point or the other, they are going to retire. And when they come back, they're not going to come back with loads of saving or retirement plans or anything like that. The only way their family has been sustaining here because they are productive now. It's just that they make money, they're sent here, and things are running. But once the source stops and they come back, they'll have nothing to show except their old age. And how will this huge workforce who's working abroad, once they get to the retirement age and come back here, when they're no more required wherever they're working, they'll come back here with no retirement plans, no pension, no nothing. And their family had been sustaining only because they have been productive at one stage. So in long term, things can even get worse. So all these people who are in their 20s and 30s and 40s who are working abroad at the moment, it seems like okay because they are being very productive and they're sending in money. But when time moves on and they get into another phase, there's no social security or anything of that kind to speak of. And what happens to all that workforce at another time? It's going to be again another very difficult story to handle, I think, for Nepal.
I mean, this demographic that's also overseas as well, there's a noticeable hole in young men, 20 to 40, who are labourers, who can work and sustain this building back movement.
Exactly, yeah.
Is it something that they could assist with if they were to come back and assist and help out, or would that just be completely intangible for their families? I mean, it's kind of
actually to rebuild. Right? That's one of the problems that we have here. Is more than the money. It's actually the workforce. I was talking to this person the other day, and he was saying that it is the money is not a problem. But the problem is the workforce, in all strata, laborers, engineers, because all these people are abroad and working. It's so difficult to get laborers, and or not enough of laborers to rebuild everything. So all this is creating a problem. And to ask all these young forces who are working abroad to come back, they're not just going to come back and then for emotional sake and then say let's go and rebuild our country, because a man has to survive, and for that they need income. So unless and until they're shown some sort of source of income or stability here for them to come back and work, they may not be willing, because they have a family to look after and they have a job going on which they don't want to lose. So that's kind of a tricky situation. I mean, if we want those forces to come back, we have to make sure that we do provide them a sustainable job, something that they can fall back upon. And if the government or the other agencies who require them cannot promise that, I don't think so. This workforce is just going to come back here on an emotional basis to build back Nepal, because they have a family to run as well. They don't want to lose the job that they have there as well.
Exactly. So it's where priorities come into case.
Right.
If you're trying to set up a family and somewhere that's happy, I guess it's the introduction of technology as well. People getting on Facebook, people seeing how happy other people are in other countries and other places, and how people flourish, and how the world runs in a much more cohesive and coherent manner. Until the middle of the 1990s, Nepal was in the dark as to how the rest of the world would run, because that's kind of the pride that comes with Nepal as well, is that it remains sovereign and it didn't get taken over by any exterior force. But now that's kind of coming back to bite it in the bum, so to speak. There's this pride in retaining the national agenda that was, but it hasn't moved forward so much. It hasn't progressed. It hasn't reached the digital, globalized village that the rest of the world has become, and it's just going to the lowest list of functioning economies in the world.
I know we are in a very uncomfortable position, because, you know, like before the 90s, or say just about 30 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, more than 80% of the people's life in Nepal 30 years ago was no different from the people's life 300 years ago. You know, in terms of how they were making their living, in terms of the way they farmed, in terms of the way they go about doing their daily chores, the kind of tools and equipment they used on the daily basis was no different from the people that were doing the same thing 300 years ago or 200 years ago. You know. But suddenly in the last 25 years, especially even less than that, and especially in the last 15 years, there was a drastic change, you know, like, and none of the traditional things, I wouldn't say none, but 95% of the traditional things have been wiped away, you know, and that just happened within the 15 years. And the irony is, in the name of modernity, we have left everything that had a cultural value, had a traditional value, and when it comes to actual modernity, we're not as modern as modern should be. You know, for example, look at Kathmandu. I mean, if you had come here 30 years ago, it would probably seem like a different world, at least. You know, it had cultural values, it had traditional, it has its own cultural lifestyles, and that had its own appeal. But now, in the name of modernity, we have lost all that, we have wiped all that, and what we think is modern is not really modern. So we're kind of not here, not there. And all that happened in the last 15 years. And a person like me who has seen Nepal 30 years ago and is observing the changes that is happening now, it's a very sad case, because right now what I see is we're not really modern and, as modern should be. You know, like, for example, the Middle East, like Qatar and Dubai, in the last 15, 20 years has changed drastically, but they have modernized themselves in a very, very modern way in today's era, you know, like you said, digital and all that. So they have transformed themselves into a very modernized city. But us, in the name of modernity, we have left everything that was traditional and culture and everything. And what we termed as modern is a rather chaotic situation. You know? So that way we are at a very pathetic situation at the moment. And as a Nepali, this can hinder our identity as well. Because after all, you know, person's identity matters a lot. You know, that's what a person's you know, image is built, and person's root is. So in the beginning, it might seem all right for a person to go abroad and have a job and see the lifestyle there, but in course of time, they realize that their own identity is also very important, besides just getting a job and living in a comfortable place. Like a lot of Nepali people have gone to Australia, and when they first go, they might be very happy. Okay, a good job, a nice country, but in course of living there, they realize that, oh, life is not only about this, life is also about who I am, what my identity is, what my culture is, you know, and that gives me my roots and my image. And when they come to that stage of realization, they realize that they have actually lost all that. they don't have that solid identity, because in Nepal things have gone haywire, chaotic, you know. So that is one of the reasons why now the Nepali people are so desperately wanting to have this feeling of nationality and feeling of, you know, oneness and the brotherhood kind of thing, because they have entered the second phase, and the second phase is realization of this. The first phase is just wanting to make your life comfortable, you know. You don't realize about nationality. You're not thinking about your culture. You're not thinking about identity. Your first phase is you're thinking about, how can I make money? How can I put food in my stomach, or my family's stomach? You know, how can I have a roof? But once you get that, then you realize, oh, you know, I need that as well. I need to know who I am. I need my roots, you know. And now I think a lot of Nepali people, in course of time, you know, are beginning to realize that, and that's why the nationality has suddenly become very, very important. But in practice, we have almost lost it, because nationality is just not in speech and thoughts. It's actually in lifestyle and practice, you know. If we're not practicing, or our lifestyle does not reflect our own culture, our own tradition, then there's no nationality to speak of. You know, you cannot just get in front of thousands of people and say, be patriotic and be nationality, and your lifestyle and your way of life does not reflect any of that, you know. So that is kind of a dilemma Nepali people are in at the moment. You know, they do want to have this national pride, and at the same time, the nation itself has not given them any reason to be proud of. You know, I'm the kind of person who believes that it's not just, as opposed to what Kennedy said, it's not just only what you do for the country. The country also has to give you some sense of pride. You know. And that's how your nationalism comes up. There has to be some reason for the country to make you feel proud. And most of the Nepali people are not feeling that. The country itself has, I think, doesn't have any reason for them to give pride. They're desperately looking. And the only thing that they find over the years is Mount Everest, Buddha. Why are you proud of being a Nepali? Oh, because we have Mount Everest. Why are you being proud of Nepali? Oh, Buddha was born in Nepal. And how long can we just sustain on those two reasons of being proud of being a Nepali, you know? The country itself also has to give you other reasons to its citizens to be proud of the country. And that the country hasn't been able to give. And, you know, by sustaining its history, by giving them sense of culture, and now with all these political changes and new constitution, especially in the last, you know, over the period of last 25 years, we've gone through many changes. And all these changes, what they did was they said, okay, now we're trying to bring in something new and discarding the old. And I don't know if that's a good move, because if you're discarding the old, you're discarding your history as well. And you cannot put your old all in one basket, because you do need to have your old to know your identity. But with all these political changes and so-called revolutions and so-called new Nepals, and the politicians thinking that what the previous regime did, or the previous dynasty did, is all bad. So now we have to move in a new way, in a new phase. That means disregarding all the history and all the things, and that leaves the Nepali people again without any identity and without any reasons to be proud of their country. Because basically when you say you're proud of your country, you're talking about history, you're talking about people who contributed to that country, you're talking about various sorts of pillars of that country, which gives pride to its citizens. and we're lacking in all that. Most of the Nepalis don't have respect for their politicians. Many, at least most of the things that have been done in history is wrong. We have to go from with a new beginning. So there are a lot of people who believe that what happened in the past was all wrong, or whatever we thought that the great people who contributed in one way or the other to build Nepal are not actually great. So and with all this feeling, it's going to be very bad. And yeah.
I mean, you nailed it on the head there with the. I was going to try and prompt you onto the identity complex that Nepal's having, but you prompted yourself into it.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not just an accent.
Yeah.
Kudos for being able to say that.
So that way, our youth, they lack role models in the society as well. And most of the youths, when they think about being someone, they don't see someone achieving that within their own society as a role model. They always have to name someone foreigner, and which is pathetic, for any field. Like someone wants to be a politician, they will probably not say, I want to be like this politician of Nepal. They might probably name someone from abroad or someone and say, maybe I would, if I become a politician when I grow up, I might want to be a politician like that, So a lot of youth lack role models within their own framework, within their own society. And that's not good, I think, because you've got to have role models within your own culture and within your own environment. Because a lot of the young people, while they're living in Nepal, another situation is a lot of young folks who are living in Nepal who are getting this Western education, who are exposed to all kind of Western things through internet and televisions and stuff like that. They don't even have to travel to know what's happening around the world or what kind of culture the world has these days because of the digital age. There are remote villages in Nepal where they don't have access to roads, but they have access to 70 channels and they have internet. So all these people know what's happening in New York, or what streets of New York is like, or what streets of Sydney is like, or so there's no cultural shock to speak of. And they might follow this Western lifestyles and things like that and say, okay, I mean, we are more kind of, they have this image that, okay, we're kind of Western, But when they really get to West, then they realize that, oh no, there's a lot of difference between the Western and us. We really thought we were Western in my own country, And that's when they realize that, oh no, we have to grab hold of what we actually are. And that they have lost while they were growing up here through internet and through exposures and through this. So then they realize that they're neither here nor there,
How do you mitigate those cultures though? Like they're similar in some ways. I mean, there's this principle within many Nepali people that I meet, and when you speak of the lack of role models and good people out there, there's so many good people in Nepal. I meet an amazing new Nepali almost on a weekly basis. There are so many incredible Nepali people out there with their hearts. They'll show you on their sleeve.
Oh, I totally agree with you. The general Nepali people, the mass, the common Nepali people are the best people in the world. No doubt about it. Me too. I mean, since I was a kid, I've been traveling around the world, and the best people in this entire world I've met are the Nepali people. But they're the normal, average Nepali people.
How do we mitigate that with the Western inspiration of sorts that they have?
Just lack of role models in proper places. I think what we are, we have the general public is our gem. They're very good. It's the so-called intelligent people. It's called so-called people in power. The people who are in the driving force. The problem is with them. They are not good, as general Nepali people are. If these people in positions even had half the heart of the general people, half the kindness and emotions of the general people, I think the country would have been on a different level altogether. So I would say the reason why we are in a situation that we are is because of the so-called intelligent people who are in the driving force of this country. The general mass, they're gem. They're absolutely, there are no people like that in the world. I mean, I as an actor have a lot of connection with them, because my movies and my performances are appreciated and watched by the mass of this country, And most of the characters in most of the films that I do is with them in my mind, with their emotions, with their taste, with their outlook, with their aspiration in mind. I develop my characters and my movies. So that way I have a real strong connection and link with the general people of this country. And I had an opportunity to know them across the country, in very close quarters, meet them. And I don't know how it works in the other countries, actors and audience, but in this country what I've realized is it's not just fan and audience, it's more like a brotherly feeling, of family feeling. Like if I go to the remotes and I'm meeting this family for the first time, they meet me with an open heart, like they've met a lost son or a lost brother or a lost, So it's that kind of affection. It's not just a fan adulation by an audience or a craze. So and that part for me as an actor is very precious, and I value that a lot. And over the years, like 26, 27 years, I've been working as an actor and doing almost 300 films. More than the awards, more than the recognition, more than other things that I have gained through this profession, it is that affection which is the most valuable, that connection that I've been able to make with this wonderful people of this country. And that's why I feel doubly sad, because I have such connections with the normal people, I've portrayed their characters in the film. I've met them personally. I've heard out their stories. That's why I feel doubly sad when things are not being done for these people, on a governmental level, on a national level, where it comes to creating jobs, where it comes to uplifting their lives and their situations, things really hasn't been done. And when I see that, it makes me very, very sad, and in some ways very angry, that why aren't the people concerned are moving things forward for these people? Why these people are still having to just defend for themselves. And despite all that hindrance and all that challenges, they still are very good at heart. And they still love their country so much, And I meet the so-called people who are laboring around the world. I meet them, and whenever I meet them, given a chance, they still want to return to their own country. If they could make a reasonable livelihood, if they can have a source to sustain their family by working in Nepal itself, they're ready to leave. Because they have so much of love for their country and so much of love for the place they live in and the villages they live in, And I'm talking to them maybe in a nice coffee shop in Dubai or Qatar, but they talk about their memories of their village, and how, given a chance, they wouldn't think twice to go back if they could make a reasonable living in their own country. But the problem is, they see absolutely no future. They say, Nepal gaera ke garne, And I would love to go. I have this memory. I have this family. I would love to go back to Nepal and work. And as a matter of fact, tell me, Dai is like an older brother. Dai, you're so lucky that you're able to live in your own country and make a living, And So I feel very sad, and so they give me all these feelings, and at the same time they say, but what to do? Ke karne, Nepal gaya ke karne? By going back to my own country, what am I going to do? How am I going to send my children to school? How am I going to put food on the table? At least by working here under the scorching sun of Qatar and Dubai and Middle East, because they're mostly in a laboring department, like working in the farms and constructions and stuff like that, where they have to work under the harsh weather condition. So I have to endure all this because that's how my family is surviving.
Yoho Nepal.
Yoho
Nepal.
Nepal. And the modernity they see around them actually means nothing to them.
Yeah.
So that is the case of the general Nepali people, and so it's a sad case that we haven't been able to find a way out for that section. And now with the earthquake, little things that people had built all their life are in ruins, are destroyed. Because for one television program, I went and actually spent a night with the earthquake victims in their dwelling, just living their life for 24 hours.
How did you find that?
It's pathetic. I mean, I was, and for me, just for one night, for them, that's life. It was so difficult to endure. I was cold all night because I slept where they slept. I ate what they ate. The food was actually nice because it was simple. I like simple food. I'm not into extravagant. I think I'm into health. So I thought, a spinach and a coarse corn flour, porridge kind of thing. I thought that was healthy. But when someone is just sustaining on that day in and day out, it can be rather boring. When you don't have any options, simple things are only welcome and you like it when you have options. When you know you can get better things, then when you do simple things, you enjoy it, right? But when you don't have any choice and you're forced to only do that simple thing in life, then it becomes kind of tedious, and you want to get out of that situation. And theirs was the same case, So I went and lived with them in their corrugated small shack where one can't even stand fully, erect. It was very cold, and the bedroom and the kitchen was there, and they cooked in open fire, so the whole place was smoky as well, so that can be not very healthy. And the sad thing is that they actually had a farming land to sustain with their homes well before, but because after the earthquake their entire village was destroyed, they were shifted from their area to this place, so they could not even do farming in their own farms now. So they had no produce to speak of. At least when they were, prior to the earthquake, they were growing their own things and having something to eat. So they're now sort of, they don't have access to that as well. And it's almost a year and things hasn't changed, and I don't see any way that their situation will change anytime soon. So it's a very, very sad situation that way.
Okay. We've covered a lot. I'm thinking, where can we take this? Like, what kind of message can we? I've been trying to get it from every single interview, a call to action of sorts. At the end, what do you see as something substantial that you could say? I guess you've said a lot of substantial things already within this interview. What could you say as a call to action of sorts to Nepalese domestically, Nepalese internationally, and then the rest of the world internationally? Because we're planning on getting this globalized.
Despite this pathetic situation, there's of course know, the silver lining is there. We are in the darkest of cloud, but it doesn't mean that the silver lining is not existing. We do have hopes, and hope is my very strong hope is because, like I said, we have such a wonderful population in this country. At one time or the other, collectively, all these people would want to better their own countries. Maybe we will not be just looking for guidance and leaderships from the so-called our leaders. Maybe there will be a point where this great people, the great population of this nation, will collectively decide that we got to change things. We got to put things in order, on their own. Because so far, the changes that we have gone through, the kind of revolutions and movements we've gone through, it had always been under a leadership or one ideology or the other, and people just followed that blindly, and time and again they've been let down. They thought, okay, now this movement is going to provide us what we really are looking for, and they put the leadership of that movement on the pedestal, and once they're there, they're discarded like a chocolate wrapper, and our politicians are like that. As long as the chocolate is within the wrapper, they'll keep the wrapper, but once they have eaten their chocolate, and the wrapper, who are the public, the chocolate is the position they want to get into, the position of power. Unless and until they are in the position of power, they seem they are very much with the people's cause and the people's emotions. And the people give them support, and the people, give them force. But once they are in power, they get their chocolate out of the wrapper, and they no longer need the wrapper, and the wrappers of the people. And the people have always felt like this, no matter from what. And the irony is, in most of the cases, like most of the leaders that we have today, I was very hopeful when the change came in. We had 240 years of one family, a monarchy rule, which was in a way totalitarian. So I thought when the new leaders showed up in the horizon, I had lots of hope. And the reason being is that most of the leaders that we see in power today are actually from the grassroots, actually are from the people's level. And I thought, once these people get into power, at least they will be able to recognize and identify the problems of the general people, because they themselves grew up in that circumstances. So they had more sense of identification with the general people. But ironically, it doesn't work that way. Memories are very short. Once the very people get into the power, the pyramid just turns upside down. Like when the basic people, the populations, the pyramid is like this. The most powerfuls and the rich are less, and a lot of people who are the general populations are the most in the country. And among the general population, when a leadership comes in, the general population thinks that this leader is from among us, and he's going to fulfill our desires because he can be able to identify. But once the same leader gets into power, his memory does not serve him at all, and the pyramid just gets turned upside down, and he becomes the elite all over again, So that is the situation now in Nepal. The people who have taken them into the power, who thought that they are one amongst them, who are going to see their problems, but once they got into the power, these same very people just turned into elite and forgotten about their own past, and have almost discarded their connection with the general people. And that's such an irony. That's why you see Nepali people have been time and again betrayed by their government. So it's a time when Nepali people should sort of realize, should take things in their own hand and not, really look up to any leaders or ideology for now, because the only way to develop a country is, in this century and age, I don't think so we need any kind of ideology. We just need good economy, good jobs, good health, good schools, good roads. That's the kind of ideology we need. It's not just communist ideology or that ideology, which just sort of like promises people, and raises people's hopes high and doesn't deliver anything. So, but I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful because Nepali people are now being very aware. They're getting educated. A lot of people are living abroad, and like I said, now a lot of people are entering the phase 2, because initially when a lot of people went abroad, they were still in phase 1. Phase 1 in the sense that I'm getting to a better place. I'm getting a job. My life is going to be all right. I'm going to be so happy. That's the phase 1, right? And they are in a nice country. They say, oh, good road, good house, good living, good car, good job. I'm so happy. But then the second phase enters is, but I'm Nepali. My country is Nepal. Why is my country not like this? So they're not satisfied by getting things for themselves. They're saying, they're not just satisfied by riding their car on a good road in another country. They're saying, why my country doesn't have a good road? Why my country is not being able to provide me a good car? Why my country is not being, So a lot of Nepali people who are even living abroad are getting into this new phase and thinking like that and saying, maybe we should do something in our own country to make our country in power of this, So that is the hope that I have. And all these youths who are being educated and who are sort of like in the beginning to make their own life comfortable might be attracted to go abroad. But then they also get into the phase of saying, no, we have to do something for our country. So I'm just hoping that this force will grow, more. And eventually people will come and there will be also a space given to them, or they will make their own space to improve things here. Because we just need good people. This country does not, it actually is not, it doesn't lack money. It's the distribution of money. Because, it's a poor country. I'll give you a joke. This joke will probably explain everything.
All right.
I've shared this joke in a Nepali television program as well, so I'll try to tell you in English. Our Prime Minister, he went to America. This is a joke. Then he went to America, US, and he saw it's a nice country, nice thing. And then the US president calls him to his private dwelling for a dinner or something, and he goes and he looks at the president's lifestyle, the way he's living, and then he says, our Prime Minister says, oh, Mr. President, you have a very, ostentatious lifestyle, very nice lifestyle. You couldn't just maintain this on your presidential salary. How do you do it? And the president says, come to the window. And he opens the window. And then he says, do you see that huge, beautiful bridge in the far distance? And our Prime Minister looks and says, yeah, I see that bridge. It's beautiful. It's huge. It's big. And the US President says, when that bridge was built, I took 5% commission. So when things like that are built around my country, sometimes I take 1% commission, 2% commission, and that's how I earn my extra money, and I have this lavish life. And then time goes on, and then the US President visits Nepal. He lands at the airport, he looks around, a very poor country, and then he goes to the Nepali Prime Minister's home for dinner, and the roads are pathetic. It's a bumpy ride. He almost bit his tongue. And then once he gets to the Nepali Prime Minister's home for dinner, he looks around and he sees, wow, this man is not living a bad life. His life is in par with his own. And then he says, the U.S. president's asking, I came from a developed country, we make a lot of things, but you are from such a poor country, people are so poor, the economy is so down, but your lifestyle is not any less than mine. How do you maintain it? Obviously not on a prime minister's salary. And then our prime minister also calls him to the window. He opens the window and he says, do you see that bridge over there? And the U.S. president looks and says, no, I don't see any bridge. Well, there was supposed to be a bridge. I took the entire budget and didn't build the bridge. So this is how our country functions.
Yeah.
There's not lack of money. A little bit of corruption, a little bit of under the table happens in politics everywhere in the world. Politics doesn't work in straight line anywhere in the world. Politics is a dirty game. But, there are countries where people actually do things, and but this is a country where there's so much of fun for an earthquake, nothing gets built. Where's the money? There's money for the bridge. The money is there.
I'm meant to be interviewing Ollie again next week. What would you recommend I ask him? Or I could forward a question on Ollie, PM.
Yeah. Ask him this.
Ask him this?
Yes.
All right.
There's money, but why aren't things being done? Why the ground reality hasn't changed? What is it? I'm hoping he has the answer, because I don't. Because there's no dearth of money. And right after the earthquake, I saw a lot of energy. I myself was called for several meetings. Planning Commission called us for a meeting. Prime Minister's office called us for a meeting. And there was a meeting of people from all walks of life with Prime Minister and everyone present. And they charted out a real nice plan and policy, and they had a slideshow or projections showing how future villages are going to be like, What the whole village was demolished. They said, this is how we're going to rebuild again, with new idea, reflecting the culture of the area, reflecting the natural sources of that area. And that's how we are going to remodel villages all over again, So they had lots of plans. There was thousands of pages of plans. And even in that meeting, I stood up and I just told them that, instead of having these thousands of pages of plan, and the meeting went on for 6 hours, I said, for 6 hours talk, if you're able to make a small changes on the ground and show it to the people, that would be so much better, And after a year, exactly, we have no changes to show on the ground. But there are a lot of policies and a lot of plannings have been made of exemplary villages being built, future earthquake resistance villages being constructed in a new way. And they even thought that destruction was in a way a blessing in disguise, because now they will be able to go in a new way, in a new manner. So it's all confined to all talk and no doing. So that's sad. So I would be pretty interested to know why things aren't happening. Maybe the Prime Minister has the answer, because I don't. As far as I see, money is not the problem, I think.
Yeah. All right, we'll call it a wrap there, I think.
Yeah.
That's a good place to leave it.
Yeah.
Excellent.